Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Tanya in Real Life. Today, we are going to be learning, Baruch Hashem, Be'ezras Hashem, we're going to be learning Tanya chapter 16, Perek Tezayin. When we started learning Tanya, we talked about the idea of Yichidus, how Hasidim would have private meetings, personal conversations, soul connections on a personal level with the Rebbe. And the Baal Tanya compiled the Tanya in a certain sense to take the place of many of these Yechidisim. So many people were having the same or similar questions, and the Baal Tanya wanted to enable more, I will say, service and connect with and guide and mentor more people. And that's why this is what he wrote about in his introduction to the Sefer Tanya. And that's why he wrote the Tanya. So in every parak, in every chapter, in the Rebbe addresses, the Alter Rebbe, the Baal Tanya addresses another question. And the question that we have in chapter 16 is, what about if my heart is not getting moved by my mind? Because, in order to appreciate this question and put it in context of what we're up to, let's just quickly review, touch base with the end of chapter 15, where the Baal Tanya was discussing two different types of love that we could experience. We have the expressed love and the Ava Musuteres, the hidden love, which we'll be talking about Mirz Hashem starting from chapter 17. But chapter 16 begins from the point of that message. The Alter Rebbe wants us to know that developing emotions for Hashem is actually not the main focus of the Beinani's life. Yeah, emotions come, but that's not the main focus of a Beinani's life. The main focus of a Beinani is to be the master of our behavior, and that's the opening lines of chapter 16. And then the question becomes, okay, so let's say I'm doing this. Even a regular Beinani who meditates is going to have some sort of emotion. What if I don't have that emotion? What's going on with me? Is my service of Hashem still valued? Is it still valuable? Is it still precious? And we'll understand that question more once we get into this. So the main focus of Beinani is to be a master of our behavior, to consciously choose what we think, say, and do. And I want to just talk about this for a minute, being that we haven't been learning Tanya in a while, and this is part of our getting back into it. The clarity of focus of knowing that our main mission, our main role, our objective, our goal is to master our behavior. The reason why it's so helpful is because managing our behavior, guiding our behavior, deciding on our behavior is a full-time job. It literally is a full-time job. It takes all of our energy and attention. So every ounce of energy that we invest in managing, controlling, criticizing, condemning, judging, analyzing, whatever it is, someone else's behavior, that directly takes away from our investment in mastering our own behavior. Because mastering our own behavior, that's the klal gadol. That's the main role. That's our full-time capacity. This doesn't mean that we are to ignore or enable and perpetuate toxic behavior from everyone and anyone around us. It means that we recognize where we begin and where another person, and where we begin, where we end, and where another person begins, right? We are not going to change anyone. We could share, we could guide, we could help, we could support, we could inspire, we could encourage, all of that, but we're not changing anyone. Every single person must change themselves. We must change ourselves. We're gonna change ourselves. And changing ourselves, mastering our behavior is a full-time job. So there's a spotlight in our minds, and every time we notice that our inner spotlight, that spotlight in our minds, is focusing on another person, whether it's telling their story, getting into their heads, deciding what they were thinking, what they should have been thinking, what they're probably gonna be thinking, right? All the stuff, our criticism, our analysis are apart, and we have now today, every Jewish magazine has a whole section on psychology and labels, and we're always diagnosing everybody, and anyone. When we find ourselves doing that, we want to turn the spotlight in our minds back where it belongs, directly onto our own selves by asking ourselves, what is going on inside of me? What's my avodah right now? What is my service? What's my playing field where I'm going to kick my ball? What is my playing field? Someone else's stuff is their playing field. How I could help them might be part of my playing field, but how I could judge them and criticize them and analyze them and think about, meditate about what they should or shouldn't be doing, that's a distraction from my avodas Hashem. That's not even, I'm not even in my playing field when I am there. Okay, I want to think, what's my playing field? What label just landed on me? What's going on? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? What's my what are my options? What are my possibilities? What do I need to do for myself here and now so that I could show up in service of Hashem, the Ein Sof Baruch Hu? That's what we need to know. What do I need to do now? Or what do I need to do for myself? Or what do I need to do for others in service of Hashem here and now? If we want to be a Beinani, and all of us, this is our big ticket item. Okay, so let's read this inside the text of the Tanya today. If you get these emails, you got the notes either by email or by WhatsApp, and they are actually already on the website. So if you didn't get them, you can go on to energizedliving.org and download it directly from the website. Alternatively, you could just open a Tanya or look up on Chabad.org, Tanya chapter 16. We're not doing that much text inside. We're just going to do a little bit of the text inside. So I hope that everyone could, I hope that we could follow along with that one. Okay, so beginning of chapter, okay, this is an important principle in the service, in a Beinani service of Hashem. The main goal, the main idea, the point of it all is to limshal, to govern and to dominate our nature, which is in the left part of our heart. That's where our natural impulses are, our tendencies, our habits, our desires, our cravings, our personalities. We want to make decisions about what we're actually going to release from there into action, into the action of thought, conscious thought, into the action of speech, and behave in anything we do with the rest of our bodies. Okay. Now, how does the Beinani do this? A quick review is Al Yedei Ar Hashem HaMe'er LaNefesh Elokis Shebemayach, through Hashem's light, which illuminates the Nefesh Elokis, the neshama, which is in the brain, and enables us to rule the desires of the heart. This was discussed at length in chapter 12. Beautiful comparison where the Baal Tanya compares the light of Hashem, actually the energy of our, not compares the light of Hashem, tells us that what do we have in Hashem gave our neshama the power of light over darkness. Our neshama has Hashem's light, which is and with that we have the power of light over darkness, which means that the minute our neshama is in charge, the minute our neshama is in control, the minute our neshama is switched on and in the driver's seat, it's like turning on the light. We automatically, the darkness dissipates. Okay, so that's the power of light over darkness, which was discussed at length in chapter 12. Now, how does the Beinani get to turn on the light of our neshama? When the Beinani contemplates, meditates in his mind about the awesomeness of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, of the infinite one, of Hashem, the infinite Eibishter, the infinite God, blessed be He. To give birth from this understanding, from this meditation, a spirit of Ruach Das V'yiras Hashem, a spirit of connection and fear of Hashem in our minds. So that meditating about Hashem's awesomeness, meditating, contemplating, thinking about Hashem's greatness leads us to it leads us to turn away from doing anything that's forbidden by the written Torah or the oral Torah. Even a minor avera, even a minor prohibition, chas v'shalom. it also, in addition to giving us that sense of I'm going to stay away from doing anything that Hashem doesn't want me to do, it also generates meditating about Hashem's greatness also generates a love for Hashem, which we experience in the right side of our heart. Now, the Baal Tanya describes the emotions we might feel. And this is what's going to give us the questions that we have, right? What are the emotions that we might feel? What kind of love? A chasheka, with a longing, the chafetza, and a deep desire, ledafka, to cleave to Hashem, bikiyam ha-mitzvahs, through fulfilling the mitzvahs, daraisa, darbanan, the written Torah, the oral Torah, the Talmud Torah, shekeneged kum, and learning Torah, which is equivalent to fulfilling all the mitzvahs. Okay, so that's the summary of a Beinani. A Beinani meditates about Hashem, thinks about Hashem's greatness, and thus motivates himself, or we can motivate ourselves to stay away from doing what Hashem doesn't want us to do, and to engage in connecting with Hashem, an active, dynamic relationship through Torah and mitzvahs. Now, what is the value of our emotions? What is the value of emotions in our service of Hashem? What place does it have? If the main thing is action, what is the place of emotions? If the main thing is to just do the right thing, why do we need emotions? Why do we need emotions altogether? Maybe we should just be like robots, chas v'shalom, but like, just do. Who cares how you feel? The Zohar tells us that emotions are the wings of every mitzvah. Emotions allows a mitzvah to transcend to a level of, emotions elevates the action that we do to a space beyond the mundane, the physical, and the tangible. Our actions, behavior, everything that we could see and touch is tangible. And by being tangible, it means it's limited to this physical world, right? We want to elevate our actions to a space beyond the physical. Emotions do that for us. Emotions are a force of energy. And in that sense, emotions are actually more spiritual. They're more refined. You cannot see an emotion. You see the energy of emotion as it's expressed in a word, in a deed, in a behavior. But we don't see emotions. Emotions are a force of energy that flow through us and flow into our behaviors, right? So emotions are more refined. Emotions are, in a certain sense, more spiritual because they're less physical. They're not limited to things. They cannot be contained within things. They're bigger than things. And that's why they can take our behaviors up to soar to a level of connection with Hashem that's beyond the physical. There's a story of the Baal Shem Tov, I think it's the Baal Shem Tov, who was standing out, was traveling, and was about to go into a shul. And as he walked into the shul, he said, no, I can't go in there. It's too full of prayers. This shul is too full for me. It's too full of prayers. And people didn't understand, what does it mean it's full of prayers? If it's full of prayers, that should be a good thing. So the Baal Shem Tov did not want to go into that shul. He said, it's too full of prayers. It's too full of tefillahs. And people said, why? If it's full of tefillahs, shouldn't that be holy? Shouldn't that be special? And he said, no, because these prayers, they were words. They did not have energy. They did not have emotion. So they were words. And in being only words, they were like clumps of stone that were just, they stayed in the shul. They didn't soar up to the heavens. In order for a tefillah, a prayer, to soar up, it's got to have emotion. That is the wings. Emotion is the wings of a tefillah. And the Zohar says that emotions are actually the wings of every mitzvah that we do. If we don't have emotions, what's the mitzvah? What's the action? Now, I just want to clarify that there is value to doing every mitzvah that we do, whether or not we have emotions, as is discussed elsewhere, right? Even if I don't feel it, just the fact that I did this mitzvah, Why? Because in last parak, in last chapter, chapter 15, the Baal Tanya was saying that even if we don't realize that we're doing it, we could have been doing something else. The very fact that we're doing this means that on some level we want to be doing that, and that desire to be doing that is already an emotion. But the more, if we want to really give power to the mitzvahs that we do, we've got to invest it with emotion. We want to put our hearts into it. We want to put our love, our passion, our excitement into it. And that's the place that emotions have in our lives. They're not just an extra thing. They're huge. It's important. It's a very, very, it infuses our behavior with the power to soar beyond the physical. And that's a huge deal. Okay. So now what if I don't have palpable emotions? A Beinoni now comes to the Baal Tanya and he's in Yechidus and he has a question. Look, I'm doing all the right things. I'm meditating. I'm thinking about Hashem. I'm contemplating. I'm actually even mastering my behavior. I'm not doing in my behavior. My thoughts are aligned with Hashem's truth. My speech is aligned. My behavior is aligned on every level, but I actually do not feel a palpable emotional energy. I am talking to my heart. My heart is listening, but my heart is not getting moved. It's not getting excited. It's like a stone. It's not getting uplifted and elevated. And I hear my friends and they're talking about this amazing passion and the joy and the delight. And I can't relate. It's unrelatable to me. I'm not feeling it. I want to feel it, but I don't. So first of all, let's just understand what this means. We're talking about that there's this person, right? And I think we can all relate to it, that I want to feel this, and in some level I have an appreciation for it, but my emotions are not activated. My energy is not rushing through me. It's all in my mind. You know, there was a group of Hasidim that were farbrengen in Russia, and they, around the table and a bottle of vodka, there was a few of them sitting and discussing their level of their service of Hashem. And they were discussing where they have to improve and how they want to grow and how they want to serve Hashem with more energy. And suddenly there was a knock on the door. And the energy in the room completely shifted, because a knock on the door was a very scary thing. They were worried that maybe they were being discovered or being intruded on by a member of the secret police, where you weren't allowed to be gathering together with more than, I don't know, 1 or 2 or 3 people, right? They weren't allowed to be gathering. So in that second, as the energy shifted to one of palpable energy, everyone went flying in different directions. It turned out that the person at the door was a fellow chassid. And he came in and they continued their farbrengen a couple of minutes later. And one of them said to the others, he said, look at us. We were sitting and talking about how we want to grow and we want to do this mitzvah better, and we want to concentrate on our davening better. We want to daven with more of our emotion. And yet we all, we're sitting there and discussing it. It was an intellectual conversation. Suddenly there's a knock on the door and the energy, and we move and we jump out. And they noticed that there was a huge difference in the relationship between when they were talking about their service of Hashem, it was intellectual. When there was a knock on the door, it was emotional. And that there was all of a sudden there was this huge push of energy that spurred them to immediate action. It was a whole different ballgame. So the Beinoni wants to know, I don't have that. I don't have that level of energy in my avodas Hashem. I just don't have it. I'm meditating and I'm talking to my heart, but I just do not have it. So first of all, the Baal Tanya tells us why this happens. Okay, let's read this. Let's read it inside, but I just want to explain what the Baal Tanya is going to say. How could it be that we meditate and talk to ourselves and think about Hashem, and yet our heart remains silent? How could this possibly? How could it be that we do not get to that bubbly, active, energizing, pulsating joy or delight or yearning or craving, whatever it is, it's all in our minds. How could it be? So emotions, let's talk about it first and then we'll go into the text, okay? Emotions, we learned earlier in chapter 3 that emotions are the children of our intellect. Now, every child has 2 stages of existence. First, it exists in the mother's womb. First, it exists as a fetus, an unborn fetus, where it is completely attached to its mother. Everything the mother eats, it automatically ingests as well. Obviously, there's a barrier, there's that placenta wall barrier, but it's totally dependent and identified as part of the mother's body. It's an independent thing, but it exists within the mother. Okay, and then after its birth, it's no longer a fetus. It's an individual, independent child. Okay, so that's the 2 levels of existence. First, it's a fetus, and the Hebrew word for that is ibor. It's in a pregnancy stage. It's a fetus, and then it exists separately as an independent being. Now, so too, our emotions are the brainchild, right? They're the children of our intellect, right? If we think about Hashem, we give birth to an energy. That energy is emotions. Now, that child that our meditation gives birth to also has 2 stages of development, 2 stages of existence. First, it exists within our minds. We have an intellectual appreciation. We have an intellectual understanding and an intellectual desire. I understand that this and this thing is desirable. That's when my emotion is still in its quote unquote fetus stage of existence, okay? And then that emotion emerges as separate from our minds, and it exists within my heart, and from there to the rest of our bodies. We experience these two stages of development in our world. Why? Because everything that we experience in our world is rooted first and foremost in the supernal worlds, in the heavenly spheres, in the world that's beyond time and space, in the spiritual worlds. So every neshama, every one of our souls, which means our capacity for emotion and also our capacity for intellect, but our capacity for emotion and intellect is rooted in the supernal midas. We come from the heavenly spheres. That's right. We come from, why do we have emotions in our hearts? Why do we have the potential capacity for emotions? It's because we come from the supernal midos, from the supernal emotions. Right? Now, some neshamas, according to Kabbalah, some neshamas stem from the midos as they exist in their independent, in their born state of existence, and some neshamas stem from the midos as they exist in their hidden state, in their fetus existence, as they exist still within the intellect. And that's why some of us, as much as we meditate, as often as we meditate, as profoundly and deeply and as much energy as we invest in meditation, if our neshama roots are from that space in the supernal midas, where it's still, where the midos, where the emotions are still in a fetus state of existence, where they're in an ibor, where they're not yet born, we will only experience emotions as they exist in our minds. We won't have those palpating, pulsing, that strong, intense energy that flows through our bodies in the way that maybe other people describe. And I think this is very validating to understand, because many of us don't have, I know that we don't all have that pulse, we don't have that level of emotion, that intensity, that energy that is sometimes described by other people and by the Tanya. Now, what does it look like when a person's emotions are hidden and not revealed? Okay, what does it look like? I think it's important to have awareness of what it looks like so we can know how it relates to us, okay? When emotions are hidden and not revealed, it's not an energy running through our bodies, it's an appreciation in our minds, and our hearts kind of get on board. Our heart gets the memo that this is a desirable, appropriate, fitting thing, and this is what we want to do, but our heart doesn't get heated up with the flow of emotional energy, okay? And before, I want to stop for questions, but first I want to just say, you know, how do I know if I have this neshama? How do I know if it's a neshama thing or if I did not yet meditate enough? Maybe I didn't meditate enough. Maybe that's why I don't feel it. And I think we need to each of us, we need to be honest with ourselves and say, did I actually meditate? Maybe I need to meditate more. And we're going to do some of the language in the Tanya that's going to demonstrate what meditation, the language of meditation and what it looks like, so that we can upgrade our level of contemplation and reflecting and connecting, and even intellectually, with Hashem's infinite awesomeness. But I want to bring this to another way. Another way that we can see this is like, we can look at our other relationships. Each of us can look at our other relationships and the other places in our lives where we experience emotion, okay? How much emotion do we experience in our other relationships? You see, the table, the table of Hasidim in Russia, when they came back to that table, they were like, oh my, so we do know how to have emotions. So we do have strong, passionate energy flowing through our bodies. We do know how to get our hearts racing. This is what we want to achieve in our relationship with Hashem. I want to get my heart racing in my relationship with Hashem. They looked at that as an indicator that they do have that level of emotions. So I think it's a good thing to look at your other relationships, look at experiences that you have in your life and where you do have emotion, and then that could be an indicator of, hey, that's how far I can go. That's how much more I can get. That's how much more emotional energy I can get beating in my heart and flowing through my body. I remember somebody at our Shabbos table as a kid. I remember somebody at our Shabbos table, maybe it was a sister or somebody who was there at the table. I don't remember exactly, but I remember they were so excited and they were like, whoa, they were like motioning with their hands, whoa. At first they did this, and then they're like, whoa, I'm so excited. And my father said, he like looked at them, he was taken aback by like, you know, he said, and it reminded him of that of Hebrangen that he once was at, where there was a chassid who had recently, just then actually emigrated from Russia and had entered the United States of America. And that Shabbos, he was able to see the Lubavitcher Rebbe for the very first time. And so my father watching I think it was my sister, doing this with her hands and getting so excited. He's like, whoa, that is what this and this chassid did the first time he saw the Rebbe. That's how excited he was to see the Rebbe. Like, you're so excited about the party, you're so excited about the news that you just heard. That's how excited he was the first time he saw the Rebbe, and he imitated what that chassid did, how that chassid was so excited. The chassid was like moving with his hands. It was a different hand motion. You know, my sister, I think, was going like, whoa, but the chassid was going like clapping his hands like this, like so excited to be seeing the Rebbe. He was jumping out of his skin. Now, some people never get that kind of excited. They never do this. They never go, wow, they never burst into song and dance. That's their level of intensity. They don't have that intense emotional energy moving through their bodies and being expressed in their words, in their action, their behavior. They have more like a straight line, you know? There's no intense ups or downs. You know, I remember I in my early work with working on the book, Your Awesome Self, which at the time I called 12 Connections, I met with Rabbi Twersky a few times. And he had Rabbi Dr. Abraham Twersky, and he had a tremendous amount of energy. Like, you know, he looked very frail and weak, but when he got up to run and get a Shulchan Aruch, let's say off his shelf, he ran. It was very, very, very interesting. But in the way he spoke, he would never scream. He would never yell. He would never like be passionate. He didn't move his hands and he didn't make these gestures, and he was very, you know, even keeled in the way he spoke. Whatever he could sometimes say like really mind-blowing things, but he didn't go like, oh my goodness, right? I remember I got a compliment from him in writing. He wrote to me, your writing is awesome, period. And I was like, whoa, that's very passionate for Rabbi Twersky. And I remember thinking like, everybody has their level of intense emotions. We need to be honest with ourselves. We need to look at our lives and look at the energy that we have. The most intense that we could get, if we never get emotionally charged in the way that actually expresses itself in action, and we feel our heart racing, we break out into sweat, we have this adrenaline pumping through our bodies, there's a butterfly, a fluttering in our heart, you know, when you really love someone and they walk into the room, there's like, I'm excited, right? You feel it as a physical thing. If that doesn't happen, then that's you hear what I'm saying? Everyone needs to know, we need to know what is our capacity for emotion, and whatever our capacity for emotion is, that's where we want to aim for. That's the level we want to aim for in our Avodas Hashem, in our service of Hashem. And sometimes Hashem gives us the opportunities to experience intense longing, intense desire. And I know for myself that sometimes when I feel that way, I'm like, whoa, this is how I want to feel in my relationship with Hashem. This is how much I want to miss communicating when I miss the tefillah. This is a level of regret I want to feel when I didn't do the mitzvah. This is the love, this is the delight I want to get pumping in my heart when I realize that Hashem just walked into my house, into my heart, into my presence. So if I can get so excited about this, I want to get this excited about Hashem, about my relationship with Hashem. But some people are just more intellectual. They're very, very, very intellectual. They don't have this energy flowing through them at times that's so uplifting and at times so painful. They're much more intellectual. So if we want to know, did I meditate enough? Did I do that work? We could look at our emotions in the rest of our life. And if we are overall more intellectual and not emotional, if we always across the board feel things in our minds and not in our hearts, then we are not lacking in our Avodah. This is simply our nature, the way we are designed. But if I get so hurt and so excited and so overwhelmed, like I have this word that I use sometimes with my children, I'm a very person, you know? I'm a very person. If I'm sad, I'm very sad. If I'm happy, I'm very happy, right? But if I am a very person, then I want to be a very person. I want to have that same kind of intensity around my relationship with Hashem. That's what the Baal Tanya says in the note, right then and there. Like there are some souls, many, many souls, that do not have the capacity for pulsating emotions in our hearts. Okay, now, the next few lines, the Baal Tanya elaborates on what does it look like for a person who is in this state. What does it look like? And I think these lines are very, very telling. You know, what's going on in our minds? If I want to have extensive, passionate emotions, what do I think about in my mind? Now, years ago, my old self, when I would learn this parak of Tanya, I would probably skip these lines or mumble right through them. Why? Because they're not telling us what to do. They're just like, oh, da, da, da. They're elaborating on something that we all know, okay? I'm supposed to think Hashem is great, Hashem is wonderful, Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is everywhere, very nice, right? I should love Hashem very, very much. Okay, I know that already, right? But if we think about it more deeply, these lines are so telling. The Baal Tanya is painting a picture. It's giving us an example of language for a conversation that each and every one of us can have with ourselves. These lines are a sampling, just a teeny sample of what our minds could tell our hearts when we are trying to develop and arouse and trigger emotions in our hearts. This is what contemplating Hashem's awesomeness looks like. In today's world, as we sip a cup of coffee or whatever else, or we eat our ice cream, okay, or we're sitting on our chair just relaxing, our tendency is to distract our minds. I know my tendency is definitely to fill my mind, right? I have such a busy mind, and I think we all do. Our minds are constantly bombarded with information, news, stories, classes, right? It's all good. It's all good things. But let's remember to take time to actually think about Hashem's grace, of Hashem's greatness. There's a famous story of Rabbi Weinreb. Maybe some of you have heard it, but for those of you who haven't heard it, I want to share it again. Rabbi Weinreb, once, when he was in his middle-age years, I think it was when he was in his 40s, he was not yet sure. He wrote that he was experiencing some doubts in his faith and some questions about how he should proceed in his life. He wasn't sure if he should continue serving Klal Yisrael in the rabbinate, as in the position of a rabbi, or if he should perhaps go into a different field. And he wanted to discuss this with the Lubavitcher Rebbe for guidance, but he wanted to be anonymous. He called up 770 Eastern Parkway, and he called up and he wanted to make an appointment. This was, I think, in the 1950s or early 60s. And Rabbi Chadakov, the chief secretary of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, answered the phone and said, and Rabbi Weinreb, as he told the story afterwards, he said that he was able to, he understood that Rabbi Chadakov was in the room together with the Lubavitcher Rebbe at that time. He could hear Rabbi Chadakov repeating everything back and forth to the Rebbe. And Rabbi Chadakov said, you know, okay, he introduced himself as a Yid from Maryland, and that he wants to talk to the Rebbe. So the Rebbe said, you know, ask him, why does he need to come to New York from Maryland? There's somebody he can talk to in Maryland. And he repeats this to Rabbi Weinreb, and the Rebbe continues, tell him that there's a Yid in Maryland, his name is Rabbi Weinreb. He should talk to him, and that's how he'll find clarity. And Rabbi Weinreb was shaking, he was flabbergasted. He's like, but I am Weinreb. I am Weinreb. And the Rebbe said, well, that's what I meant. And Rabbi Chadakov repeated to him, well, that's what I meant. Amal, sometimes we have to talk it through with our own selves. So what does it look like when we want to, and that doesn't negate our need for advice. But very often when we're confused, the reason why we're confused is because we didn't yet talk it through with our own selves. Our mind didn't yet have that conversation with our hearts, where our heart says, but this, you know, but I don't like it because of this, but I don't like it because of that. And then our mind responds, right? We sometimes we just need to have that conversation. So now, as we want to arouse feelings of love for Hashem and excitement in our relationship with Hashem, the Baal Tanya gives us some of that language that we can have in our conversation with ourselves. So these words are not just technical. It's a sampling of language. So I put these words in the text that you have in front of you. I think it's under number. I'm not reading from that thing, so I don't have it exactly, but I hope you find it. Okay. Dahainu, Shahalev Maven. Okay, so what does it look like when our heart understands what our mind is telling us? Dahainu, Shahalev Maven, but it doesn't get moved by it. Okay, our heart understands what our mind is telling us, but it doesn't get moved by it. Meaning our heart understands with the spirit of wisdom and understanding that's in our minds, Gedulas Ein Sof Baruch Hu, the awesome greatness of Ein Sof Baruch Hu, of the infinite Hashem, before whom all else is literally as nothing. The Kula Kamei Kala Hashiv Mamish. Hashem is so awesome that nothing exists without him. Nothing exists in Hashem's existence. There is only Hashem. Anything that I like is really Hashem. Anything of value is really Hashem. Anything that's precious, that's meaningful, that matters, that's alive, that's vibrant, it's all Hashem. Nothing else exists before Hashem. Asher al kain, so when the mind tells this to the heart, and the heart gets that memo, what happens? Asher al kain, ya'asa la yizbarach. I bolded those words, ya'asa la yizbarach, because those are key words here. Ya'asa la, that's the Baal Tanya's word for the heart's emotion. As a result of the intellectual understanding of Hashem's greatness, the heart appreciates, the heart understands, ya'asa la, it appreciates, and therefore it's a good idea, it is appropriate, my soul should desire Hashem. I should. The heart understands, I should desire Hashem. It's fitting. Hashem is appropriate for me. Every living being, my heart even understands that every living being should yearn and crave Hashem. Crave for, it says of, crave for Hashem. Every living being should want to cleave to him and to be absorbed within and enwrapped within Hashem's light. Every living being, this is what we should want. My heart understands, this is what I want. This is what I want to want. V'gam nafshay beruchai. Now the mind, our mind continues talking to our heart, and our heart is taking it in, absorbing it, hearing it. V'gam nafshay beruchai asher b'kirbai kach ya'asa lahen. Right? Our heart appreciates that also my own soul within me, I too should desire Hashem. I should. My heart understands I'm supposed to be feeling excited in Hashem's presence. I'm supposed to want Hashem. I too should have such a fervent desire. I too should have such a fervent desire that I want to get past anything that gets in my way of cleaving to Hashem with intense desire. Even to get out of this container, which is my body, to cleave to Hashem. Our heart understands, and this is why I made that introduction, this language that our mind is telling our heart is very, very, very passionate, very intense. So if we want to have emotions, we definitely need to use emotional language. We definitely need to really think about, if Hashem is true, and of course Hashem is true, and if everything of value is Hashem, and nothing else exists before him, it's all Hashem, and Hashem is all, then I want him. I want to be part of that oneness. I want to be part of that picture. And I don't want anything to get in my way, to get between me and Hashem. I don't want to lose that awareness of the truth. If I really appreciate this is the truth, I don't want to lose it. I want to have it. I want to be one with it. And I never want to let it go. Now, this body of mine gets me distracted at times. I want to get out of here. I only want to be one with Hashem. That's what our mind could appreciate. And that's what our mind is telling our heart. This is if I really understand Hashem, if I really get his awesomeness, then this is what would theoretically be happening inside my heart. This is the kind of desire I would be having. I would be having. Our hearts appreciate our mind's thoughts, that we should desire Hashem so strongly. To what extent? That the only reason we're alive, the only reason we're not expiring from intense desire and passion and yearning for Hashem with such intense energy, the only reason is because we're forced. It's because we're forced. We're attached to our bodies like deserted wives who are attached to their husbands, but they don't desire that attachment. They don't want that attachment. Chas v'shalom, a woman who's been abandoned by her husband, she's legally attached to him, but she doesn't want to have anything to do with him anymore. Because that's what you do to me. I don't want you, right? So our mind is looking at our body as an obstacle in this absolute, I would say, ferociously passionate desire for Hashem, and our mind says, you are getting in my way. I don't want you. I don't want you. I want to have nothing to do with you. The leis machshava dilahain tfisa beklal. Our minds continue to inform our hearts, right? That here in this world, so it's not just that we're getting excited about Hashem, we're also getting excited about the opportunity to do mitzvah. Why? Now we know, okay, this Hashem that we want so badly, that we want to be one with, that we want to cleave to, this Hashem who is everything, this Hashem, you can't understand him. You can't relate to him. You can't have a relationship with him. He's beyond us. No hearts, no minds, no thoughts can grasp Hashem at all. Except for one way. There is one way that we could actually have a dynamic, active, real, alive relationship with Hashem. And what is that? By learning, except when it grasps, there is a way. There is a way to have a relationship with Hashem. He's infinite, we're finite. He's limitless, we are limited. He's a creator, we're the created, but yet we could have a dynamic, real, organic relationship with Hashem. How? Because our minds could grasp and learn the Torah, and we can get invested in doing a mitzvah. By learning Torah and observing mitzvahs, we grasp Hashem himself. And for the Torah is one with Hashem. And the Baal Tanya continues, just like in the analogy that we learned in Perek Daled, about one who hugs, who embraces a king, which was described there, that even though the king is dressed in many robes, you're hugging the king. You're hugging the king. You feel happy that you're hugging the king. You're hugging the king. It doesn't matter how many layers of clothing he's wearing. You're hugging the king. So, there's more. But I'm gonna stop here because I think it's a good place to stop, and we're going to continue next week. But isn't that, like, if you think about that language, it gives us an insight. It gives us a glimpse into what it looks like to meditate about Hashem's awesomeness and to really talk to ourselves. Like the Rebbe told Rabbi Weinreb, sometimes you have to have a conversation with yourself, to really let it sink in, the thoughts that, oh my, Hashem is so awesome. I want Hashem. And like, there's even a certain frustration of being so distant from Hashem. And yet the awesome value of being able to do that mitzvah where I can literally be in Hashem's embrace and Hashem could be in my embrace. That is so powerful. So that's just a little window into the words that we can tell ourselves and the conversations that we can have with ourselves. And then from this place, I just want to continue. I'll say orally, and the next week we'll learn it more inside. The Baal Tanya says that usually when emotions are the only wings that a mitzvah could possibly have to soar to the heavens, to soar beyond the physical world. But if a Beinoni does whatever he could do to develop emotions, and his soul is just not that type, I don't get to level 10 of emotions. I get here with my emotion. This is the extent of my emotions, right? That's fine. Then that Hashem takes our good thoughts, our good intentions, our emotional energy that's really an appreciation and not a palpable energy, but it's emotional language that we've been using with ourselves. And Hashem makes that the wings for the mitzvahs that we do, and our mitzvahs soar high. So as long as we're doing our best, Hashem does the rest. And we'll talk about that more next week. But now let's stop for, if you want to tell everyone what you're taking home from this, and what your thoughts are, and how is this hitting you, right? Intention is something we do in our minds. Ava, love and fear is something we have in our hearts. In order to develop that intent, that the love and fear in our hearts, we need to intentionally focus our minds on Hashem's greatness. And we need to intentionally think about, be intentional about, like, oh my, I'm giving this coin in the pushka, and please Hashem, may it be a merit to hasten the geula. And I'm aware that giving this coin in the pushka has the power to bring the geula closer. And when I have that intention, if I'm really present with that intention, it will generate some level of emotion. The question is only, what kind of emotion? The question is only, what level of emotion am I going to give birth to with that intention, with that thought, with that contemplation and reflection? That's the difference here. Wow. So someone just shared, I'm going to repeat it for the recording. Someone shared, and I'm not going to be able to repeat it as eloquently and with so heartfelt the way she just said it, but I'm going to try. That frequently, because we're talking about the relationship between what we tell ourselves in our minds and how we feel in our hearts, and how to generate that emotions and the emotions that we have. And so she said frequently throughout the day, she says, Hashem, you are loving me. And as she tells herself, Hashem, you are loving me, she notices where in her life Hashem is loving me. Hashem is feeding me. I put my hand in the refrigerator and I got what I needed. Hashem is helping me breathe. I'm not on a ventilator. I'm able to breathe. Thank you, Hashem. And Hashem, this is a sign of your love. Hashem, you are loving me, and I am loving you right back. Noticing Hashem's blessings and allowing herself to be present with that, and feeling that gratefulness generates that feeling of love. But I think what you also meant, and tell me if I'm wrong here, is that just saying it puts us into that emotional energy and that mind space of Hashem, you are loving me and I love you. Ooh, someone said something very, very important. There's another thing that gets in our way of experiencing emotions. And Shelley says, and this is such a good point, Shelley says that there's another thing that gets in our way of experiencing our emotions, and that is our inner sarcasm and voice of criticism. Our inner critic gets in the way of our sensations and our emotions. The inner critic steps in to narrate what we are feeling, and it gets sticky. I could very much relate to that. Very often I'm davening. The minute I get into my davening, there's a voice in my head that says, stop faking it. You are such a faker. That's what happens. So we want to get emotional, want to allow ourselves, but maybe we're self-conscious, and maybe we're judgmental of ourselves, and maybe we don't let our emotions flow. So that was a very good point. Thank you. Someone says a very, very important, this is a question. I'm not sure if it's a question. I don't get excited anymore. I am dead inside. But then she writes, I did get excited by a recent beautiful experience. So you're not dead, you're alive. That's your way up. There's always a way up. And if you got excited about a recent beautiful experience, that's your way up. And there's a beautiful story where in Navi, where Elisha was approached by a woman who had given away her money. Her husband passed away. I'll just say it in short. Her husband passed away, and he had borrowed tons of money in order to feed the Nevi'im who the king wanted to kill. And now that he passed away, she did not have the money to pay back the debts, the tremendous amount of money that he owed. And the creditors wanted to take away her children as slaves. She had 2 children, slaves, and they wanted to take away her children and as slaves in replacement for the money that was owed that she could not repay. So she came and she told this story to Elisha. And Elisha said, "What do you have in your house? What do you have in your house?" And she said, "I have nothing. I just have 1 little flask of oil." And Elisha said, "Well, go borrow as many containers as you possibly can. Don't minimize. Just get as many containers as you possibly can. Kalim rekim al tamiti. Empty vessels. Don't get a little. Get a lot. As many as you possibly can. Close the door of your house with your children inside, and start pouring from this little jug of oil. Start pouring into all the empty containers, and with that, you'll have money for all your needs." Now, the Baal Tanya tells us the deeper meaning of the story, because every single story in the Torah has a body and a soul. And the body is the story as it happened in factual reality. And the soul is the message and the story as it happens in our lives today, in our personal experiences, in our daily interactions. So he says, a woman represents Knesset Yisrael, the Jewish soul, the Jewish spirit, comes to the prophet and says, "I am dead. My husband is dead. I don't have emotions. This is what, I don't get excited anymore. I died inside. I don't have emotions." Not only that, but the creditors takes my emotions and wants to use it for something else. Her 2 emotions represented, her 2 sons represented the primary emotions of love and fear. And the creditors want to take my emotions and hijack them for otherness. Not only do I have no fear and no emotions in my relationship with Hashem, not only that, but now my emotions are going elsewhere. So what does Elisha say? What do you have in your house? What do you have? And we say, we've got 1 spark, and every single one of us has it, even when we say we're dead inside, even when we say we have no emotions for Hashem, even if we say our behavior is robotic and we're just going with the flow, each and every one of us has that spark, that inner spark of life, that absolutely untouchable oil, that pure oil. It's also represented in the story of Hanukkah when the Jewish people found that little jug of oil. That is also represented in the essential Jewish soul, that the spark that's untouchable, uncontaminated by anyone ever. And if we look, we find it. And we take that, which maybe is even beyond our accessibility. Maybe we don't even know how to reach it. Maybe we don't know how to open it. Maybe I cannot access that spark inside me, but I know it's there. And with that, I'm going to use that. I'm going to pour into empty vessels. What are the empty vessels? Mitzvahs that are empty of emotion. Mitzvahs that are empty of emotion. The Baal Tanya says, take as many mitzvahs as you can do and do it anyway. And fill up those empty jugs. Do those mitzvahs. Kalim breakim al tamiti. Don't hold back from getting as many empty vessels as you can. And do those mitzvahs, and you'll see that spark will ignite into a burst, into a flame. That jug of oil will fill the emptiness, and they will be empty no longer. So I want to just bring it back to this practical, that's such a beautiful visual that we can have. But when we feel dead inside, I have no emotions in my relationship with Hashem. I did get excited about a beautiful event, means I have the capacity for emotions. I just don't get excited. I don't have any emotions in my relationship with Hashem. Number one, I want to advise you to deal with the pain, because I know in my own life, when I could not feel emotions in my relationship with Hashem, it's because I was so hurt. And I could not feel emotions until I dealt with that hurt. So if you look at that pain and do something to address that pain, the minute you start addressing the pain, which means like soothing the pain, taking action to alleviate the pain and giving yourself relief of the pain. And I don't know, what the particulars are in this situation, but there's always a way to give yourself relief. Talk to somebody who can help you through it. For every ounce of relief, you'll be able to feel joy, and that joy is the opening to emotions for Hashem, because when we're so hurt, we cannot feel emotions. You have a fire burning in your soul, but it's covered up by pain, and we need and address that. And at the same time, don't wait until you start feeling passionate about Hashem to do mitzvahs. Kalen Rekim Al Tamiti. Just sometimes the very action of doing a mitzvah sparks the soul, sparks the light in our soul, and wakes it up and fills it with energy. So those are two things that I think we could do. But hugs, that really, like, I had a short stop of breath when I read that. I'm sorry. Somebody shared something beautifully. Shelley, speak up next time. Say this if you're still on the phone. It just dawned on me, Shelley says, it just dawned on me that everything we are wowed by in life is really being wowed by Hashem. If you ever feel a sense of wow, Hashem is wowing you, because without Hashem, there would be nothing. Thanks for sharing that. The next time you're feeling wowed, say, thank you, Hashem, for that wow. Okay, the Navi is Avadia, thank you. Someone is sharing something also very beautiful. Gail, thank you. I feel more excited when I sing a niggin or a prayer. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, my dear friends, this was a little heavy. Thank you for joining, and I'm looking forward to next week. Thank you so much for joining. I look forward to, tonight we're having a parenting based on 12 Connections, where it's a parenting conversation at 9 o'clock. If you know anybody who might be interested, let them know so we can join together. And it's week number 5 of that. Next week is the last time, but they could still catch up. And each time we meet, it's self-contained. So looking forward to next week, continuing chapter 16. Thank you so much for joining.